what's happening to nonprofit organizations now from a leadership standpoint? You know, when you peel back the reason for them being in the community, they have the same exact problems as people who run businesses. You know, they have decisions to make, and they have things that need to be accomplished, and they have hopefully a purpose and a direction, and they have people to, you know, to coordinate and to work with. And so when we all get thrown into this big mosh pit of stay at home and we're not sure when this is going to end, it makes people nervous. And a lot of times it can make people get them overwhelmed, and it can just cause them to become paralyzed. So what I talked about was, you know, from my vantage point, being an executive and a business coach, and working with a lot of individuals at that ownership or executive level, where their chief responsibility is to make sure that things get done either in the entire organization or in part of the organization, you know, based on their function. Those are the folks I work with. Those are the folks that are having an incredible amount of difficulty right now just navigating this whole process. Well, we've been living in it for 2 months, you know. So what happens after that? You know, depending on the phase you're in, you might be opening up, you might have to wait, you know, you might not know. I mean, it is a very murky landscape that we're looking at. And that causes a lot of people to become paralyzed and fearful of what's going to happen. And as a result, do nothing other than just kind of wait for clear skies. And unfortunately, that doesn't help. In fact, most of the time that can put you behind when it is time to get out there and build your business back. So what I did was I shared with these folks 5 things that I see on a routine basis that all business owners and people in authoritative roles need to be able to warm up to and embrace if they're going to get back out into the market with their organization at whatever pace and whatever speed their particular business and their clientele basically can afford. All right. So here's what they look like. First thing you have to do is take a look at what is your new vision. You know, if you were really good, and most people are, they start the year off and they plan for the year and they set big goals, and they hope that those goals will lead them closer to that ultimate vision they have of building a really quality, well-respected, you know, sustainable enterprise. Okay, whatever that happens to be. But then all of a sudden you get hit in the side of the head with something like this, and it tends to cause everybody to just get thrown off track. Well, you can't necessarily go back to the short range and intermediate goals that you had at the beginning of the year, because they may not be applicable. Now you may be in a situation where you have to kind of reinvent what you want yourself to look like by the end of this year, certainly the middle of next year. You know, none of us really know how long the residual effect of this is going to last. But what I can tell you is, without a newly crafted vision of where you plan to take your organization, you are going to be in that giant toilet bowl swirling around with a bunch of other organizations that don't have any direction and will end up succumbing to the devastation that this virus is probably going to leave behind. Doesn't mean you have to, but it means doing nothing will kind of ensure that that's what happens. So the thing I tell clients and colleagues, people I work with, is first sit down and really craft a clear outcome for where you plan to go in an intermediate term. Know what that looks like. Understand that you're trying to lay a roadmap for uncertain territory. Got that totally. But it's still better than not doing anything and just kind of waiting to see what happens. The second thing that you've got to do as a leader is you've got to warm up to the whole idea that right now, one of the most beneficial skills any of us can have is the ability to adapt, to see what's changing around us and recognize where that change might or probably will lead us, and start adapting your organization to be able to meet those new demands. You guys hear about it on the TV, and you probably read about it, you know, either on social media or in the paper, almost on a daily basis. Businesses reinventing themselves. People go out and doing things to continue serving up their product or service in a completely different way. Well, at the helm, leaders have to initiate that thinking by starting to have conversations about how are we going to get around this, or how are we going to offset that, or what are we going to do when all of a sudden our operating rules are this wide. You know, we don't have many choices. But if the leader is not adaptive and they're not acting like being adaptive is important, nobody else will do it. You know, everybody's looking at you and they want to follow you. You've got to set that pace. And you've got to help your employees become adaptive in their thinking and look at ways that they can do stuff that maybe they never thought about before because their days were fairly routine. You know, several weeks ago, I did a whole show on how to reinvent a new routine. And so if you have people that are stuck and they're feeling out of place and they're not really getting the work that's in front of them done well, it may be because they're still fighting that feeling of just not being in the right routine. But from an adaptive standpoint, you as the leader of your organization have to set that pace and help everybody else get on that road with you. So how do you do that? Well, one of the things you do is you start communicating a lot more frequently. You'd be surprised at the number of people that I work with who don't tend to communicate a lot from a purposeful standpoint. They kind of get involved in communications throughout the day because people come in their office or they're walking around the floor, they're talking to folks. So it's kind of what I call ad hoc communication. Sure, you can learn a lot of things and get questions and things done, but it's not purposeful. It's just happening in the moment. Well, now we're all, you know, in remote locations. Some of us might be at the office, some are at home. People are not with each other. And so now your communications has to be purposeful. Now, guess what happens when they're not purposeful? They tend to go away. Now you go days on end without necessarily talking to anybody, unless you're dealing with an emergency or unless somebody's calling you. But as the leader, is your outreach purposeful enough that it allows you opportunities to communicate? If you're not communicating daily with your team, if nothing else, just to get the foundation of the day going and let everybody contribute about what's on their plate and what they're doing so they can still feel like a team in a virtual environment, then communications is not working for you. So as the leader, you definitely want to make sure you figure out ways to communicate on a much more frequent basis. Now, when I say that, I don't mean communicating with the idea of telling everybody what to do. Most of the time, communication in these kind of remote environments really means being accessible and asking people what they're doing, what they're seeing, what ideas have come to the surface that they can throw out to help the company kind of fortify what it's doing now and be able to do it better. So right now, the best way to be able to communicate and keep everybody feeling like they're on a team, keep the relationships going, is to foster that purposeful communication. Now, what does that do as a byproduct? Well, one of the things it does is it makes people feel engaged. I mean, I can't tell you how many people that I talk to that are just completely feeling in the dark. Now, they're not in the dark, they're at home, they're working, their spouses they're working, their kids that are trying to e-learn or playing or doing whatever. There's a whole lot of distraction and energy going on in the house. The only problem is it's not helping them be productive and focused in their business. So if you're fighting that and you don't have any good engagement that keeps you connected to the person you report to, the other team members you're working with, or other people in the organization that you routinely have engagements with, then man, you can go off the deep end really quick. And I see it happen quite a bit. So as the leader, you've got to figure out ways to keep people engaged. Here's a great tip. If you have somebody that's calling you and struggling with things, let's say they're having trouble with their technology or they're trying to access things in the cloud and they just can't get it. Sure, you could spend time helping them, and maybe in the moment you do if you have the time. But you know what might be a better idea? Connect them up with another team member that you know really does it well and create a mentoring situation. Have those two people work together so they not only share best practices and one feels like they're helping the other team member, but that creates engagement that you don't have to directly be connected with. And so when you can get more of that kind of stuff done, it just multiplies the effectiveness of people really staying focused and learning and adapting to new situations, and you're not having to orchestrate every single piece of it. So think about that in terms of how best to engage your folks. Here's another one. You might have people that are furloughed right now. Okay, they're collecting a paycheck. Maybe you've got them on that PPP program and you're able to pay them, or maybe they've already applied for unemployment. It doesn't mean that you can't reach out to them and find out how they're doing, or give them an update, or ask them what they think would be the best way to relaunch the business when everybody gets the green light. you can still engage them. And I would suggest you do that, because the worst thing somebody that's been furloughed can think is that everybody in the company has forgotten about them, especially if the furlough was a financial consideration, not you were gone and you're never coming back. Okay, and I know employees today, there's a lot of things, weird things going on. Employees may not be able to come back if they have children at home and there's nobody to take care of them, like, you know, daycare service or schools are open or things like that. You may be fearful of the work environment and not want to come back for fear of possibly picking up COVID-19. There's a whole host of reasons why employees might want to stay remote. But if you know you're going to bring them back on the payroll, or you've got a really good idea that that's going to happen because that's part of your game plan, it's real important to maintain communication and foster engagement with them while they're sitting on the sideline, so they don't feel alienated, so they don't succumb to some other company coming along and saying, hey, we got this great job, you can start Monday, and all of a sudden you've lost a really good employee. The last thing you have to do, and this is a tough one because a lot of people in this situation right now are so out of the woods in terms of what they're doing. I mean, none of us have ever seen this kind of thing before, and now we're trying to make the best of it and figure out how to be productive every day and focus going forward and start planning for re-entry into the marketplace. You've got to be able to make decisions. You've got to keep your business and your actions and your thinking moving forward by making timely decisions. Even if it means having your people on a Zoom call and talking about a critical issue and getting feedback from them to help you make that good decision, you can't stop making decisions. You've got to be able to make them and move forward. You know, they're not all going to work. A lot of mine don't work, but you learn from your mistakes. So this isn't something I invented, but I read it a number of years ago and I thought it was a catchy phrase. If you're going to fail, fail fast. You know, make those decisions, go through that process, execute the plan. If it didn't deliver exactly what you thought, learn from it and keep going. But don't slow down and don't stop making decisions because everything in front of you looks kind of murky. You know, it's hazy, it's unfamiliar. That's a bad situation to get in, because what'll happen over time is you may not like it, but you'll become comfortable with not making any decisions. And the minute the green flags go up and everybody starts running out in the street trying to open their business up, you're going to get caught flat-footed. And it's really tough to go from flat-footed to all of a sudden running. And unfortunately, that's going to happen to a lot of folks. So if you're now at a point where you're really looking at, okay, this business is going to open up in another week or two, or by the end of this month, certainly some businesses now have already started doing that. Some of them didn't get permission, but they went and did it again. And I'm totally okay with that. We need to get businesses running again, regardless if the state's telling us or not, because this has been going on for way too long. So if you're in the throes of executing your plan for reentry, okay, make sure you're doing it with these 5 things in mind, okay? Have that clear vision and share it with everybody that's involved. Be adaptable. Understand that between now and the time that we're back to some semblance of normal, things will probably change again, and you just got to be ready for it. Be willing to communicate often, frequently, consistently. Keep everybody involved. Engage your people. Ask them questions. Ask them to do certain things to keep them feeling like they're part of a team that's actually going someplace. And then finally, make the decisions. Gather your information. Talk to the people you trust. But at the end of the day, make the decision and move forward. So those are the kind of things I recommend to people who are getting ready to reopen their business, start it back up, take it from 20% to 80 or 100%. I recommend everybody kind of think about those things, because that is really the core of operating a successful organization. Sure, there's a lot of other things involved. And depending on the size and shape of your business, you could have legions of people doing all kind of other specialized activities. Not a problem. But at the core, as the leader, as the person who's responsible for moving the organization forward and getting everybody around them going in the same direction, those 5 will serve you well.